Yep.
Thanks. I've presented here a few times. For those who have seen me before, I work in the spatial team as a specialist analyst, but most of the stuff I usually present on is 3D GIS based. So what we're going to have a look at today is the base builder, which functions as a digital cookie cutter. It was initially put together to quickly cut out areas of the municipality from 2D GIS data to make 3D models. So we could quickly get a surface, an aerial photograph, and the 3D building models that encompass a project area really quickly. And over time, that sort of evolved into a number of different things. So I thought I'd sort of take you through it and we have a look at how we can automate the creation of 3D data. The initial version of this, as I said, was reasonably basic, but it served everyone pretty well. It was the basis for a lot of the 3D views projects, but also served as 3D data supply to both internal and external customers. So, like as I said, being able to cut out project areas and ship them around, and also reuse a lot of our internal data sets for new purposes without a cost, which is always a benefit. So, this is just an example of the very first version. So, it takes the 2D contours, generates a surface, wraps it in an aerial photograph, and it grabs the associated buildings with that area, and you get left with these sort of 2 3D jigsaw puzzle pieces, with one being the surface and one being the models. If you're curious where that is, it is west of the MCG. So if you see where that is the train line going down to Jolimont Station. You'll notice a lot of these data cutouts are squares. They're actually 280 metre by 280 metre cubes, and they are the cubes that make up the 3D printed model in the city DNA space. So it's just a way to sort of reuse and test this data, but you can actually cut out anywhere in the municipality. And the way these are put together is through FME workbenches. So we used to manually intervene with these, but now we can load in our various data sets. There's a number of sort of things that go on I won't bore you with, but is able to automatically spit out these data supplies quite quickly. The second version looked at our 2D GIS data. So we have, if you haven't seen it before, Encompass, that we have basically every surface in the municipality as polygonized data. So not only do you know where the roads and footpaths are, you know exactly what they're made of. It all gets tied back into asset management. So all those lovely colors, which I really could have actually done some cartography on because I've got a degree in it, but not that it shows. So what you can see there is roads, car parks, park status, property, the building footprints. And it was reusing that and then actually offsetting that data against itself. So in this instance, you get sort of the extruded buildings. They're not as detailed, but you get a much more detailed road surface. So you can see like where the curb and channel sits against itself, where the carriageway comes in. Again, probably should use better colors, but that's all right. And yeah, you offset all that 2D data and you spit out a fairly detailed piece. Now, they both had kind of different purposes. One was much more accurate, but while one was used for more massing and visualization purposes. But the idea was that I always wanted to get both of these to work together and spit out one 3D model, which was not only capable of doing aerial photography, but also maintaining all the heights and locations of our asset data and then building a more accurate 3D surface. That's just an example. So obviously these FME workbenches now get considerably more complex. They're not super complex compared to some other stuff people do, but you can start to sort of map these out. I don't have to say that because you can hear that in your head. But over a long period of time, I sort of really banged my head against how to get these two things to work together, and I couldn't do it. I spoke to James and a few other people around to try and get this to work. And it was actually that picture that kind of made me work out how to get this to work. I was initially trying to build a surface and then force the sort of surface data into it, while what I needed to do was actually map out all the surfaces and then push the terrain through it. And what we end up with is the third version, which is now this all-encompassing 3D surface, which encompasses an accurate 50 centimetre contour map with all of our asset data built into it. Now, I'll go through in a second, you get a bit more of a feel for how it all looks. Obviously, the inputs of love and also hate to get this done, because it was a bit of it's taken a few years to get this to get it to work. But that's the simplified FME workbench, which again, there's a little bit going on. We're starting to sort of really look like Vietnamese power lines at this stage, but it what we're able to produce is, again, so a little bit hard to see in these images, but the simplified version, you can still see the rise and fall of the terrain, and you can still see all those locations and classifications of things. So in there, you can see the footpath property, you can see car parks, you can see things like our traffic islands with various areas, park status. And one of the other things I wanted to do was also cut out each tile. So underneath, the aerial photography was referenced. So you could then use that aerial photography to remap various textures. So in this instance, I've actually put the aerial photography back onto the carriageway, so you can actually start to see road line work and detail and all that good stuff. By the time I got this to work, it sort of moved away from this idea of data supply and visualization to how much, modeling can I just get this to do without me interfering with it at all. So what you see there, all those little markers, so they are actually the asset insertion points. So red is bins, yellow is lights, and then I was able to, so the brown marker is the insertion point of the tree, and that larger green circle is that same point with the, it's scaled based on the canopy radius of the tree. So in another program, I can put a tree in there and sort of scale it up to a relative scale, so you have a bit more of a good coverage. I even did some trials with sort of road line work, so you could digitize road line work and then get it back into the model itself. So obviously you guys have, hopefully you've seen some of the viz work that's been done in the past. This has had trees and cars added to it and nothing else. There's obviously a texturing process, but this is just sort of the out of the box results that are possible with this. They look very similar to other 3D viz projects. It just, the time wasn't taken to build them. There's a much more automated way that we get these together. As I said, so after that worked, it then was, okay, well, what's the next step? So rather than just say, okay, I'm a footpath, I now want to know what it's made of. So this is actually a roundabout in South Bank, and what the colorization is up here is now the pavement makeup. So you don't just know it's a footpath, you know it's bluestone, and you don't just know, or you have the classifications for curbs, or I had to ask someone the other day what HMA is, because the road surface HMA, which is, I think it's hot mix asphalt. Like I had no idea about any of this stuff, but trying to classify surface data into things I don't actually understand. But and what you can sort of see on the right there, which is hard to see, is that FME workbench. So it now really is just blown out into this kind of monstrosity, and I've shown it to a few people and they backed away from it. But I've actually cleaned that up again. Just some examples. So again, each color represents a different surface. We started to play around with things like retaining walls, fences, just all those surface classifications that can come in. So a really, really accurate model can be generated quite quickly. Things like car parks. So all the car parks go into the roads, and then you offset the car park against itself to make the line work. And then you cut the car park out against the curb and channel. So the curb and channel runs through the car park line work, and just all these little things over time that have now built up into that marvelous creation that you see there. Now, it is very complex, but the only thing that actually has to go into it is an extract area. All you have to tell it is the area that you want. So just before Christmas, I actually had a few customers with data requests and said, hey, there's a new thing I'm trialing, have a look at it, and it's received some pretty good feedback. But now that it's up and running, yeah, we can start to supply much more accurate 3D data, and also obviously look, it helps me when I do viz projects. So did some much larger scale testing as well, so not just those little tiles. So this is an entire cross section of Burke Street end to end. Again, I'll just flick through some of these visuals. So what you can see there is not everything's colorized up, but even getting things like the tramway and the tram tracks in against the carriageway, still everything, footpaths, tree plots, all that sort of stuff. Even larger areas like Queen Vic Market, there's a heap going on down there at the moment. There's probably a bit of a strange patch there of park status, which I'm not quite sure about, but this will all change over time now. So we can actually sort of, you have a current state modeling that can be run off very, very quickly. And again, I'll just flick through a couple of other examples. It's worth pointing out now, if you're interested, if you need 3D data for projects, more than happy to supply data. I'm more than happy to supply the workbenches. Due to over the last couple of years, if you weren't aware, we have enterprise licenses for FME and ArcGIS Desktop, ArcGIS Pro rather, which you can install yourself. So, the council itself is much more enabled in that regard. Again, just some bigger areas. So Green Line, you can see South Bank Boulevard in there, the Yarra. Yeah, it's just, it's really come along in the last little while, and I'm excited to sort of see what happens with it next. Yeah, so I guess what's next? Just continue like last year. I think I did 40 odd 3D data supplies to various areas around council, and there'll be more of them this year. Again, before and after visualizations for 3D projects, thinking about turning the entire thing into digital elevation models. So remove the buildings and have a really accurate surface for our planners to sit in 3D Compass. Refine it further as things come in and people ask questions. We can always make adjustment to it. I think that last point, we could tile the entire city, which I'm currently doing at the moment, and make it publicly available. So, yeah, and profit, of course. And that's me done. If you have any questions, you can ask them in the chat, or you can follow up me whenever you like. So thanks again.